a partnership between my company, Digital Venture Partners, and Black Enterprise, where every week I have a conversation with a prominent Black or Brown cannabis entrepreneur who is creating inroads and opportunity for more people like us to come into the space to find success. This week I have with me Chirali Patel, the founder of Blaze Responsibly, someone who I'm fortunate enough to call a business partner and a friend who's doing great work, more importantly, for people in her home state of New Jersey to get access into the space, to find success, get capitalized, and get licensed to have a seat at the table in the emerging cannabis market in New Jersey. So it's a pleasure to have you today, Chirali.
Thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate being here with you. This one's special.
Yes, very much so. So before we jump into your impressive catalog of achievements in cannabis, I'd love for you to give us an idea of what you did before you hopped into the cannabis space.
Sure. So before cannabis, it was the traditional legal trajectory for me. So I graduated law school and I actually started my career working where I never thought I would be, which was in public service and working for the government. So the city of Hoboken, county of Passaic, Bergen County. And honestly, it was some of the best experiences I had because I got to work with people and the public and really just understanding how local government works because it's really different when it comes to counties and municipalities, state, federal, and all of that, the intricacies. And so learning firsthand about how rules get implemented for the local level, how residents get their concerns addressed, and then being a prosecutor in Hoboken, really in the courtroom was where I got I guess firsthand experience on how the flaws really come to existence when it comes to our criminal justice system because my eyes saw that when you look a certain way, you get held to a different standard, which means money sometimes can buy your freedom. And not everybody has the luxury of money to be able to walk out of certain situations. And so that experience was really, that really hit me hard because, when growing up, but looking at watching law shows or just in general, seeing the courtroom and how it operated, I was excited. And then, when it physically came to it, it was so exciting, but it was also disheartening because you see, people in the system, they're trying to work within the confines of what the rules are. But yet when it comes down to implementation, it really is subjective. And I learned about the discretion prosecutors have, judges have, when it comes to sentencing and dealing with individuals. And so I learned that we actually have the power to not put people away for nonviolent offenses, right? To actually be rehabilitative in nature and to give people second chances. And so I learned that there are ways to work within the system and it really comes down to the person and what they do with it. So all that experience, I think, before I got into cannabis, working with, local government, working as a prosecutor, I did class action litigation as well, complex litigation and against pharmaceutical companies. I was one of the firms that handled the national opioid litigation, understanding how that epidemic was created and solutions when it comes to class actions. You can't bring people back to life. So how do we do justice? How do we abate the opioid epidemic moving forward? That really dived into me, hit hard. Obviously, I've lost a friend to an accidental overdose. And so that was really personal for me. And I think that all the experiences that I've had to date prepared me to get to where I am, not knowing ever in my wildest dreams that I would end up here in cannabis, but here I am.
Yes, exactly. And the thing about you that has always spoken highly of your character to me is that with all of your qualifications, all of your success, all of your resources, you've compiled them to figure out how to make other people successful through Blaze Responsibly. So I would love for you to give the viewers an idea of what exactly Blaze Responsibly does and why it's so important to the cannabis community in the state of New Jersey, but in large.
Yeah, thank you. The police responsibility is like my little baby. It came about a couple years ago when I was just working on like a personal business plan, and I wrote the words down, and I was like, this is something here. I don't know what I'm going to do with these words, but I'm going to do something. And it just stayed in the back of my mind. And as I kept getting into the industry, learning more people, learning about the process when it comes to the applications and how to get investors to the table and all of that stuff, I realized, wow, there is no room for people like me in this industry because it's so cutthroat, it's so competitive, and we talk about all of this diversity, inclusion, and social equity. When it comes to implementation, it's not really there, right? The regulations say one thing, and then execution is totally different. And so I thought, if it's so hard for me as an attorney, as a professional, as somebody who felt that they, had what it takes to get into this industry. How is this going to help? And I'm getting taken for a ride. What about everybody else? And so that's really where I said, I need to create a platform that lives as a public resource center, and for lack of better words, and just share free information and content to people. And so Blaze Responsibly, I've been breaking down the rules and regulations, specifically in New Jersey. So we just legalized it last November. And, the number one question people want to know is, one, where can I consume? Right? Where can I blaze responsibly? Where can I purchase the product? Like, are there any legal dispensaries? And all these questions that were being left unanswered initially. And so I used it as an opportunity to just break down, little fact points so that anybody can understand it. Because the way the rules and the laws written is it's complex on purpose, right? They want it to be convoluted because it is what it is. And so I was like, well, this is hard for anybody to understand, because I was getting calls from people who were like, we're outside, we're smoking. I'm like, don't do that on the sidewalk. It's not New York. New York allows you to consume on the sidewalks, right? NYPD allowed that. We didn't in New Jersey. So Blaze Responsibly is really about education. That's like the core pillar. It's about educating you on what's actually going down in the state and abroad, I would say, as well. And then just providing, accurate resources for people, and having like an open line of communication, because I think that's key. People want a place to go to that's credible and that's going to be there for them always.
Right. Historically, it's not America if we don't put a paywall between us and education, right? So you are offering what I genuinely is the first thing that I've seen in the space, to where you're giving real comprehensive information from the perspective of someone who is qualified, who's experienced, who you can validate their work in the space. So could you tell us about the event that you're doing this weekend and the information that you're giving out to Black and brown entrepreneurs in the state of New Jersey, particularly who want to get involved in the space?
Yeah, I really appreciate you for saying that. And the whole reason I'm even putting this event together is because there's too much false information out there. And particularly people of color are getting taken for a ride, because anytime a state legalizes it, it's like a money grab, right? For other industries, consultants, attorneys, everybody wants to make a piece, make some money off of it. And some people do want to help, but I've had people coming to me for the past 6 months saying they were quoted six figures for an application as a social equity applicant. This is somebody who already served time, let alone having to pay six figures for an application. That's the whole point, to avoid that. We want to avoid that, right? And so, but it kept happening, and people were coming to me and saying, we're getting quoted X amount, or I've already paid so and so. And so I was like, I need to be able to put together a comprehensive series that's free for people, period. And I want to be able to share all of the insights and just my experience in putting together a full vertical application, which I did in 2019 for medical. So I know what it takes to get municipal support, what to look for with real estate, how to put together your team. And nobody else was sharing that information. And I've asked other, I won't name them, but I've asked other organizations if they wanted me to speak on this or to do a workshop. And I was told, why would you want to share the secrets? And I've said it before, the secret is you. You're the secret. Everybody has a gift. We all are skilled, and it comes down to, can you execute what you put on paper? So the series is like my way of giving back to the community, especially for people in New Jersey who don't have the means to sign up for ticketed events. Even if it is $200 to attend an expo, that could still be prohibitive for a lot of people. And so it's free for everybody. It's for anybody that wants information, education. And I'm also going to give out 20 free consultations, because that was just my extra way of doing more. Because I was like, how can I really help people? Because I felt like 2 days still isn't enough. So I was like, well, I'm going to give out 20 free consultations to whoever, really either engages more or like is asking questions where I see like they're deserving of additional time, and I want to be able to help them. And so it's just something that I think the community needs, because if we educate people, we're going to have better operators and better, applicants to pick from.
I agree completely. And I think at this point, early on, people come into the space figuring out how to make money, but I think it's more importantly early on to figure out how to save money, right? At this point in the
100%.
process, what are some examples that you're able to share that the participants will be able to see or gain access to that they may not find in other places?
Yeah, so that's the key, right? The type of information that they're going to be getting coming to this series and this webinar is, you're not going to find on Google. You're not going to find on public forums. It's information that I've accumulated throughout the years and just based on expertise and being in the room. And so an example is, everybody's really excited for micro licenses. So am I. The state is saying that they're going to be essentially unlimited non-competitive licenses. And so there's no caps for micro licenses, which is great, but that's at the state level. It's like people are forgetting when it comes to the municipal support at the local level, which you need to get an application. These municipalities are capping micro licenses. Cities are saying we only want 2 micro businesses per license category, or we only want 2 retail, micro dispensaries. Now that's making it competitive at the local level. And there's local preferences and local politics that goes into play. So people are forgetting, they're excited because they're like micro licenses are unlimited, but then they're not focusing on that municipal, boots on the ground work that they need to do in the community to get that local support. So it's, sharing tidbits about really how can you prepare yourself? How can you be successful? And these are the kinds of, insights and tips that I'm going to be giving to individuals. And also just my opinion on the timeline, because that's what everybody wants to know. When is this application round going to open up? How long do I have to hold on to my property? Trying to just give them advice in general based on everything that I know. And that's what people are going to be getting.
And where can they sign up to actually participate in the virtual event?
So I have a link on LinkedIn. If you go on my LinkedIn profile, or if you go on the Blaze Responsibly page, the link is available. It's on Instagram, it's on Twitter. So just look up Blaze Responsibly and the link will be available for you, anybody to sign up, and it's free again.
Okay, great. And coming into New Jersey specifically, I'd love to qualify you for the work that you've done. Could you give our viewers an idea of just how involved you've been on the state and local level in New Jersey prior to it even getting to this point?
Yeah, for sure. So it's been a long 5 years, but I'll say notably, I was involved in the 2019 medical application round. I was part of the Vote Yes initiative last year, worked with the ACLU to legalize adult use in New Jersey. I was also the South Asian liaison, or the community member. So I was really in charge of tapping into the South Asian community, making sure that they go out and vote to legalize cannabis on the ballot, because it was a ballot question. And actively working with the state now through my role at the New Jersey State Bar Association. I'm the co-chair of Social Justice and Equity Subcommittee. And so that I've already had a meeting in that capacity with the CRC, the Cannabis Regulatory Commission in New Jersey. So we're going to be collaborating, working on ways to, help shape these rules to be better for the people, to implement better strategies, and to hopefully provide some sort of free services to social equity applicants in the future. So definitely plugged in and involved in a lot, and always sharing feedback with the CRC, whether it's through public comments, going to the meetings, or following up via written comments. But it's been a collaborative process in this state. I'm just happy to be involved in it.
Yeah, definitely. And I would love to get into some of the particulars and kind of dispel some of the general stereotypes around like cannabis professionalism, right? So let's say even like, what are some of the licensing types that will be going on in New Jersey? Because most people who are on the outside looking in, they assume you're either a grower or a retailer, maybe a delivery company. What's kind of the spectrum of how you can get involved in the state of New Jersey as an operator?
Yeah, so the traditional license categories are for cultivation, manufacturing, retail, delivery. And then they've added wholesale and distribution licenses as well, which I think are valuable. And then if you get a retail license, if the municipality allows it, you can also qualify for a consumption permit. So you can have on-site consumption. So now we have the opportunity, the future of consumption lounges, right? So that's another business opportunity. And then there's also going to be permits for testing facilities. So laboratories that are testing the products. Right now, there's only one state, I believe there's only one state approved lab. So that creates a bottleneck, right? Because every SKU has to get tested. So that's another big avenue. And then of course, it's the entire, well, we have hemp. New Jersey has a whole hemp program. We have over 40, I believe, processor licenses that have been given out. So there's opportunities in the hemp industry here in New Jersey, whether you're a handler or you're a processor or you're a retailer. And then there's that entire ancillary opportunity. So all the support services that come with supporting these new license categories and existing operators. So whether you do real estate, now you can maybe be a cannabis realtor. I have a woman who has a nail salon and she wants to do like CBD, nail polish services and things, like you can get creative and find a way to get into this industry without even touching the plant. And I think that's really smart, especially for smaller players who don't understand, the tax implications with cannabis still being federally legal. How do you get profitable quicker well, you can start with ancillary if you don't want to take that risk of applying for a license. And so outside of the traditional license categories, there's a lot of opportunities. It is the garden state. So I really believe in that.
And touching on something that you had mentioned for our viewers, so you said social equity. So we're pretty familiar with what social equity is, and someone may be familiar with it from a state on the West Coast. What is social equity? How is that kind of the overarching definition of it in New Jersey, and kind of who falls within that qualification?
Yeah, social equity is definitely at the forefront in New Jersey, I would say, because our legislation sets an office that's now been renamed. I believe it's going to be something along the lines of Office of Diversity and Inclusion. So we have a whole office that's going to be housed within the Cannabis Regulatory Commission that's going to be in charge of making sure that our goals to awarding certain licenses to minorities and women, disabled veterans, and social equity applicants are met, amongst other initiatives. But we also have a social equity excise fee that gets applied to cultivators. And 100% of that money that's collected that goes into the fund is going to be put back into communities, back into social equity programs. That is subject to state approval and the Appropriations Act. I won't get into that nitty gritty, but there is a fee that's associated just with social equity. On top of, I believe it's 70% of all adult use revenue that is collected that goes towards impact zones. So communities that have been devastated the worst by the war on drugs, also towards social equity programming. And so a lot of the money is going back into those communities and social equity programs. And then as far as social equity applicant status, it's anybody that has had prior convictions, cannabis related, and also for individuals that have lived in economically disadvantaged zones for a certain amount of years. So again, areas that were hit, hardest by the war on drugs. But I will say, now that I'm part of this subcommittee as the co-chair for social justice and equity, me and my co-chair are trying to work on better solutions, because she brought up, I have to give her credit, Tisha Adams, my co-chair, even though she's new to cannabis, she's not new to what the war on drugs has done. And she brought up about the collateral offenses for the women and families who are subjected to the war on drugs. When you have somebody coming into your homes and raiding you, and when you have a gun put to your head, what happens to that child when they grow up? Right? It's like we're not even we miss so many parts of social equity when we're just focusing on equity in the industry, right? It's like it's more to that. It's about rehabilitating people who were put away for a plant. How do we make them whole again? Can we provide a better avenue for them? And just supporting them in every which way. That's really what it's about.
That was quite poetic. I feel like I learned I learned more. I learned more in a 30 to 45-minute conversation with you than I learned in a few weeks just operating in the industry, having conversations with people. So I can personally vouch for how dense your knowledge is, how passionate you are about it, your compassion for people in and around the space. I would love to get your idea of, what happens if our people don't take advantage of these opportunities in New Jersey, right? Like, what's worst case scenario if Black or brown people wait until the industry's already structured and flourishing to try to figure out how to get involved?
It's, we're doing it at our detriment, because the state can at any point decide we have enough retail licenses now issued, or we have enough cultivation licenses issued, and they can stop altogether for X amount of time. And so it's like you could be potentially too late, which is one thing. Or the other, on the flip though, a wait and see approach isn't always bad, because we've seen in Colorado, the state took about maybe 2 to 3 years just to get their regulations ready, right? Like they went through several amendments. So if you are a smaller player and you don't have the budget maybe to move along with these regulations, whether they change your packaging requirements or your POS provider, waiting and seeing until these regulations are cleaned up and they're final may be a better approach, because the rules that New Jersey released on August 19th, they expire next August. That's only 1 year, and we're already in October now. So it's like you can get up and ready for the industry to look completely different in a couple of months. So it just really depends. I think I don't know. I don't know if it's ever too late. I think if you have a will, you'll always figure out a way. It's about really being strategic with your time and your money and your energy, and just being diligent and taking advantage of free opportunities like this workshop, right? Because it's free. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. You don't have to. You're going to spend some of your time, but at least you'll learn a little bit. And then when you get equipped with that knowledge, then you can decide: do I want to move forward now, or do I want to wait and see? Because there's always going to be room for somebody. It's just a matter of what it is that you're looking to do in space.
Agree. The cannabis space, a lot of people have this initial excitement to jump in, and then once you get here, you figure out it's kind of a hurry up and wait industry. You know, it's so heavily regulated. It's so many issues with like compliance and figuring out how to get licensed that a lot of times you have a lot more free time or a longer runway than you expected. So
Yes,
it's really more about being informed and having the right information at your disposal to make decisions off of. But my final question for you is,
100%.
I would love to know, what's your idea on federal legalization? Do you think it's something that's going to be beneficial to Black and brown people in the space, or do you think that we may need to be better equipped when that time eventually comes?
So I might have an unpopular opinion because while I love talking about federal legalization, I don't think we're going to have anything happening for a couple of years as far as the grand scheme when it comes to legalization, because I think it's going to be piecemeal, right? It's just so comprehensive. There's just so much that the government has to do at the federal level that I think, safe banking makes sense first to get people need bank accounts and people need access to funding because that's one of the biggest barriers, right? Access to capital. So I could see it happening piecemeal, and then in a perfect world, we need decriminalization before anything, right? There's people sitting behind bars. And that's why I'm happy, at least in New Jersey, we did legalization and decrim together because that it's supposed to go hand in hand. But when we start talking about legalization before talking about how do we mass decarcerate individuals and how do we really fix this issue before we start to make money, like that's what I would like to see. And then there's so many conversations going on about how we think federal legalization will look, who's going to be in charge. Nobody has any clue. And anybody that says otherwise is BSing you, unless they're in DC right now. And that's the part of the false narrative and the false information, right? We can only prepare for the scenarios that we can potentially think of in our head or that we can get access to understanding. And so I always tell people to have multiple plans. Plan A is, if ATF decides to regulate. Plan B is if FDA is coming in with these people. And like, no, depending on which agency is going to be in charge, it's going to look different, right? And start to thinking about the lobbying power that's already there, right? Everybody saw the news. Amazon's lobbying, right? Big tobacco's been lobbying. Pharmaceutical industry has been lobbying for for a long time. So there's a lot of powerful players and private interests at play here. So really, what federal legalization will look like, I have no idea. All I know is that we have to prepare for when it does happen because it will happen at some point. But I think if you can kind of see what the alcohol industry has done, right? State by state, each state gets to dictate what happens in their hometown, but then there's a federal hierarchy, right? There's a federal oversight, there's federal taxes, and so I'm thinking because every state's done it so differently right now, and there isn't that cross collaboration that each state may get to continue doing what it's doing, with the caveat that we'll have now interstate commerce and you can trade in and out, in between. But I think that we're not gonna really know until we get more of a comprehensive plan because even what was presented, it was bits and pieces, right? And this federal legalization, whatever that looks like, has to be thousands of pages long, not a couple hundred pages, right? And so there's a lot of work left to be done. And I'll tell people that prep for it whenever it does happen, but know that nobody knows what that's going to look like.
Thank you so much for your time, Chirali. It was a genuine honor to have a conversation with you once again. They never get old. I would love for you to leave our viewers with an idea of where they can follow you personally and where they can follow the story and the growth of Blaze Responsibly, as well as the event that you're hosting this weekend.
Well, thank you for having me, Andrew. As you know, I love working with you and I'm so appreciative of this opportunity. You can find me on Instagram at Blaze Responsibly, Twitter at Blaze Responsibly, LinkedIn Blaze Responsibly, also on my personal pages. And all those platforms have the registration link for the event. There's also an article on Benzinga. If you Google Blaze Responsibly Cannabis Course Benzinga, the link is also there. So, tap in. And if you can't find me, you can find it hopefully on DVP's website as well or on their Instagram page.